Let's talk about the Chevening interview scholarship questions and answers. Before you continue to watch, please take a moment to hit subscribe below if you haven't already, and make sure you click that notification bell to get notified once I release a new video. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel for another video. My name is Karen Harriott and I am a 2020 Chevening Scholarship recipient from Jamaica, and I am currently in the UK studying my Masters of Sustainability at the University of Southampton. And yes, I am in lockdown and no, it's not great. So I'm actually picking up from my last video where I talked about the interview preparation tips that I actually underwent for 3 scholarships: for the Commonwealth Scholarship, the Irish Fellowship or Small Islands Developing State Irish Fellowship, and of course the Chevening Scholarship. I talked about my interview experience for Commonwealth. It was terrible. And I talked about the other 2, the Irish Fellowship and the Chevening Scholarship. Talked about my tactics, talked about the fact that I used flashcards to prepare my questions and responses in the form of bullet points, as well as recording myself. So you can check out that video to see what else I talked about. I also talked about the fact that I will do a separate video to show you guys one example of me basically recording myself and practicing my answers pretty much. So let's just get right into the questions, the Chevening questions and answers. If you see me looking over across my screen, I actually have the questions written down as well as the answers that I probably would have given. Okay, so my Chevening interview process, my Chevening interview, it lasted for approximately 50 minutes. I must say, from what I know, the points are graded based on 4 categories. Of course, leadership category, networking, studying the UK, and the career. Each category is worth like 4 marks, so you can get a possible mark of up to 16. I don't know how much I got. They didn't tell me all about that. They did tell me what the highest score in my cohort was, which I won't disclose, but it was amazing. Right, so like I said, I spent 50 minutes in my interview, and the length of time that is spent for an interview is no indication that you will or will not get the scholarship. I know of someone who spent less time than myself in the interview and actually got the scholarship. And then there was another person who spent over an hour in the interview and did not get the scholarship. So I was definitely grateful that I had the opportunity to be here pretty much. So it was grueling. So I'll just get right into the questions now. I was asked about 8 questions. So like I said, it was over 50 minutes. So the first question that I can recall being asked was, why Chevening and no other scholarship? So in answering, I pretty much I mentioned the prestige of Chevening and how it would, it's a prestigious scholarship. And what I find that sets Chevening apart from literally all other scholarship opportunities is the fact that they focus heavily on networking and collaboration. And it's true, because the other scholarships that I applied for, they don't really business about networking, but Chevening does. So I talked about the fact that because they focus so heavily on networking, on collaboration, it kind of proved to me that we do share similar visions in terms of how important it is to work together to make a great impact. And I wanted to further strengthen the partnership that already exists between Jamaica and the UK. And I also mentioned the fact that I was encouraged to apply to the program by my boss, and they actually asked me a short follow-up question like, who is she, and all of that. So if you were encouraged to apply by a former recipient, it's good to kind of just drop that in there. One thing though, I have to say, I was not asked, tell us about yourself, and I'm very grateful for that. All right, so the next question I would have been asked was, tell us about your leadership experience. And I provided one example from my essay, and I kind of expanded on that. So using the CAR method, using the CAR approach, context, action, and results, I answered my question pretty much by telling a story. So my example was about leading the implementation of a platform as an answer to an organizational problem. So I started by stating what my observation was, how did it impact the organization, what I did, how I led and influenced decisions, and what were the results. So in answering, and I'm going to be reading this now, guys, so don't mind me if you see me looking away. So in answering, I said, I probably would have said, a leader to me is someone who utilizes their knowledge and skill set to impact positive changes around them. In 2016, I shifted from private sector to civil service and went to company A. While there, I noted inefficiencies in data collection in relation to quality and untimeliness, and that basically contributed to incompletion of key performance indicators. I knew I needed to take initiative to improve this, and I also knew what was needed and that we had access to the material. I just had to convince the senior management team because this would have been a major transformation for the agency. So after presenting my findings and my solution to my director, I then went ahead to lead the implementation of Company A's platform in this, and it was the first time doing something like that. Just a point, I compared my leadership experience or my leadership and influence. I kind of compared it to a coin, where I said on one side of the coin, I was leading a team made up of these kinds of persons across the organization with these roles and utilizing my leadership skills. And then on the other side of the coin, I was influencing the senior management team. So on one side I was leading, on the other side I was influencing. Influencing the senior management team because transformations of this magnitude required several meetings with senior management to ensure buy-in and that benefits would be impactful for the agency. This platform has improved data collection quality and timeliness because an officer no longer needs to do this or that. Instead, they do this. And the company has actually utilized this platform to complete indicators under projects such as this project where we have assessed this amount of data that will contribute to the formulation of a particular plan. And I also talked about that it earned an award. All right, so the next question was, did you receive any, okay, wait. So this question is actually a follow-up from the last question. And it basically talked about, did you receive any pushback when making unpopular decisions and how did you manage that? This question I really did not prepare for, but as I said in my last video, I just armed myself with enough points so that I could discuss things even if I wasn't prepared to talk about them. I had a lot of mental bullet points, so I was able to, fetch one of those and kind of answer based on the questions. So I referenced the same project that I was talking about in my leadership question. And again, I used the CAR approach to answer the question. So in answering, I would have said something like, so let me start by giving you a bit of background about how the platform works and how it was made. So this is what happened. This is how the platform works. Once we prepared everything and I presented it to our senior management team, there are a lot of requests for changes. So then I made a decision to actually start over the project from scratch. And of course, that did not go over well with the implementation team, because it meant that there would be long evenings, and I thought it would have been easier to start over rather than to try to fit in these requests or updates. So in navigating this pushback, I made it a point never to leave my team hanging and to keep encouraging them. So the next question I would have gotten was that Chevening is based on networking. Do you have this character? And tell us about an example. Again, I provided one example and I told them what networking meant to me, and then I got into my example again using the car approach, and I followed this up by telling them what I would bring to the Chevening network. So in answering, I would have said, I'm going to read, I strongly believe that networking transcends beyond meeting someone once and then suddenly saying that they're a part of your network. To me, professional relationships are cemented through collaboration by lending support to projects and initiatives that your network is involved in. And then the reverse is also true. For example, I met person A, who is a manager at company B. We engaged in conversations about the potential for something, and stayed in touch over the years through calls, emails, and by conversing at industry events. When I made the shift to public sector in 2016, I engaged him in discussing furthering my initiatives through a separate organization that we are both a part of. Subsequently, I was invited to attend meetings at Organization A with him, and then at my request, we kind of further discussed utilizing my position within these organizations to empower organizations with geospatial solutions, pretty much by advocating for a particular solution. Thereafter, presenting this solution at conferences, seminars, and workshops across Jamaica. So I talked about my largest audience attending this particular event in this year resulted in key people within varying organizations reaching out to me for support in implementing the solution, which I've gladly obliged, so far assisting 10 organizations and further enhancing my network through collaboration. So I believe that becoming a Chevening awardee would give me the opportunity of collaborating with global professionals in environmental sciences to find out techniques employed in their respective nations to protect their environment against risk and hazards and vulnerabilities. Through my local Chevening network, I'll strengthen key relationships to better tackle Jamaica's environmental sustainability. So the next question, which was like a follow-up, how can the Chevening community benefit from having you? Again, this was not a question that I had actually practiced talking about pretty much, but again, I had enough bullet points to come up with an answer. So I talked about the fact that I could promote the Chevening brand through the organizations that I am a part of, as well as YouTube. Because I mentioned that I had a channel, so I could actually utilize the platform to promote the brand even further. And then I talked about the fact that Chevening is a large network, and it would be amazing if within my own country, if we could form, smaller networks within the Chevening, broader network. For example, I'm a part of the geospatial and environmental sciences field. So it would be good if we could kind of form a network based on that, so that any brand promotion, it could be a little bit more relatable. Because of course, you would not want to be necessary. I would not want to be an environmental scientist, and definitely. Well, I'd want to encourage anybody still, but another person who is interested in environmental science would possibly find my story a little bit more relatable than, say, a lawyer. All right, so my next question would have been why the UK and no other country? In answering this, I talked about what the UK is doing in my field of studies. I'm in climate change and sustainability, so I talked about different plans and policies and initiatives that the UK is a part of and how they're a key driver in the world of sustainability, and that I wanted to learn from that. Then I kind of started to talk about the universities and how they performed, and again that I wanted to be in a place where they're not only talking the talk but also walking the walk. Oh god, my voice is going away, guys. I've been talking for a while now. So in answering, I would have said something like the UK, like Jamaica, it doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but like Jamaica, they experience climate change challenges. So the UK has managed to rise to the occasion of adapting to climate change through initiatives like the carbon plan, energy alternatives, forming committees and agencies, also through policies like the Climate Change and Sustainability Act of 2006. And as a result of this, they've become a key driver in our world in terms of environmental sustainability. So I found it imperative to look to the UK as a model in creating sustainable solutions for its country and people. And I want to be able to learn about these principles and take them back home to my own country. And I've realized that the UK has one of the best environmental and climate change platforms, and it has been among the most earliest of adopters of climate targets by setting goals, for instance, by reducing their greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050, and worked to reduce its carbon emissions by 44% as of 2018. So I wanted to gain a higher quality education and study under professors in a world-class location, as well as, with other international students, to be able to kind of gain a different perspective for those who also want to protect their country against risk and hazards, as well as, developing my own skills and having access to the latest research in my field of study. There is that reputational benefit of having a degree from a UK university, especially if it's from a world leader in climate change, such as a country as the UK, or such as the UK. Okay, so was it the last question? Okay, so my other question would have been, why the chosen universities? Did you have any criteria for choosing? So my answer for this was a little bit different from what I actually wrote in my essay, because I really got specific about aligning my study criteria with my career plans. So I started by talking about how it is important to me to find a university that is instrumental in sustainability. And I found the University of Southampton to be my top choice. I talked about the course modules I planned on taking and how these actually linked to my career, and of course other features that stood out about the universities. And to be honest, I actually really focused on my first choice, and I don't even remember if I talked about my other two choices, to be honest. If I did, I would have spent like one sentence talking about them. But it definitely came up though, because one of the panelists, they actually went to UCL, and UCL was my second and my third choice. And I remember that the panelists made a joke about that, like, how dare you pick UCL as your second choice? It should be your first. But it was pretty much what I wanted to do. So in my answer, I talked about the fact that it is strong in environmental GIS, strong in research, strong in policy formation, and consultancy. I said, or I would have said, I was very purposeful in my search for the right courses. I wanted to be a part of a community that is actively practicing sustainability. I had a set number of criteria that had to be met to equip me with the capacity to execute my short-term goal with this company, as well as my medium-term goals with this organization or through this organization, as well as my long-term goals. Or it also had to provide me with a strong foundation for my long-term plan. So in that regards, the sustainability program stood out to me as my top choice because it literally checked all my boxes. It is strong in GIS, which is my first passion, and this will go a long way towards achieving my first my short-term goals with this company. Additionally, I do aspire to be an environmental consultant with a policy background in order to, kind of close gaps relating to, this issue. So I wanted a course that would allow me to expand my capacity in consultancy, a bit of project management, as well as environmental law and policy. Also, what really stood out about this university was the fact that it possesses the only DNA lab in any UK university in terms of within the geography department, and this is what they were doing. This is what they are doing with the lab, and this is what I want to do with it and how it's going to apply. Right, so I did not actually use the CAR approach to answer this question per se, but instead I just talked about, as I said, the modules and how it would apply to my career goals. But I didn't spend too much time talking about the actual career goals itself because, of course, that's not the question. And I knew that I would have been asked about my career goals as well. So I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the career goals itself. My voice is almost gone, guys. Alright, so my next question would have been, what are your short-term goals, medium-term, and long-term goals? And of course, my answer, it kind of acted as a follow-up to my previous question, or to my previous answer, because, now I had the context to kind of expand on my ideas from the previous answers. So it could have been more detailed. So I literally talked about following the program, I would return to my job in Jamaica to execute some particular actions, and the result of those actions would contribute to a particular result. I talked about that. And then in the medium term, I want to introduce policy mapping to identify areas that are in need of policy interventions, and that I wanted to do that through the organization that I am a part of, and how it provides a perfect platform to do this because we are policy focused as well. And then I reminded them that in the long-term plan, I said I wanted to be an environmental consultant. There's a shortage of professionals within Jamaica within this field, and I want to be one who kind of fills the gap in terms of contributing to environmental solutions within Jamaica. And again, I talked about how my aspirations, it's based on closing the gap relating to analyzing spatial data to make more informed decisions in terms of policy strategies. So yeah, that's pretty much what I talked about there. And that was the last question that I got. As I said, it lasted 15 minutes. And then the next thing that I would have done now, or the next thing that they would have asked was if I had any questions. And I actually I actually had like 2 questions, and one was for the person that was on the panel from the UK. So I asked him where was he from. So it was like a 2-part question. So I asked him, where in the UK are you from, and if I were to visit that area, what should I do when I go there? So I asked him that, and he answered. And then the following question I asked would have been to the other 2 panelists. There are 3 panelists, and they're actually 2 Chevening alumni. And I asked, what was it like being on the other side of the table? Because they were once in my position, but what is it like now being on the other side? So, they both gave an answer to that. And it was pretty good. Like I said, of course it went well because I'm here now. But I think that to me, questions that you ask, I don't know. Well, it's just my opinion that I don't believe that questions that you can actually Google and find the answers to, I don't know if those are the best questions to ask, to be honest. I don't know. But at the same time, you're not necessarily being marked for those questions. But, because I suppose I kind of wanted to be memorable, I asked questions that were a little bit different. So, right, yeah, that is just pretty much my my experience. So in the next video, I mentioned in the last video that I'm going to be releasing my practice answers. So you can look out for that. That will be released immediately following this one. All right. So this was a long video, guys, but thank you for staying until now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye. One take.